Welcome back to MurrayMax. We have another video from one of Andrew Wilson's debates. This one is about voting rights, and it's with a lady named Naima, I think it's pronounced. And she kind of like made a name for herself on the Jubilee 1 verse 20s, if you've ever seen those. If you haven't seen them, they're worth a fun watch. Essentially, in short, they have one person who has a stance, and they have 20 people sitting around them that take turns trying to debate them on an issue. But that's kind of where she made a name for herself. I think it was with Charlie Kirk or something like that. But let's dive into this one. As usual, I haven't watched it. We'll watch it together. And then feel free to like and subscribe and comment if you want to. Let's see what we got.
So how can you create and apply a law to people who are not represented? I just don't understand. Morally, how do you justify
There's
it?
nothing immoral about it.
There's nothing immoral about it. I mean, but that's
like,
kind of
I would say
consent.
it's more immoral. Why is it moral for an 18-year-old to nullify the vote of a 41-year-old if the 18-year-old doesn't even know what they're voting for? How's that moral?
Well, because the 18-year-old is still subject to the laws of the state.
Yeah, but they don't
If an
even know
18-year-old
what they're voting for.
Can an 18-year-old go to jail for 20 years?
A 16-year-old can. Should they be able to vote?
16-year-olds can't go to jail.
Yes, they can. 16-year-olds can go to jail for life. Should they be?
16-year-olds absolutely can go to jail and to an adult jail. What usually happens is that they're tried as an adult, and most of the time there's kind of a situation for heinous crimes or serious lengthy terms. You know, like if a 16-year-old, brutally unalives like a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, and they're completely aware of what they're doing, they can get sentenced to 25 years to life or whatever. Sometimes they'll do a short year or two stay in a juvenile facility and then get transferred to an adult facility. And in some rare cases, they'll go straight to an adult facility. I think Louisiana has laws where you can go straight to an adult jail, but she's wrong on that one for sure.
To vote?
I mean, no, but why?
Well, why
would they
not?
be going
Why
to
not?
jail
The
though?
laws apply to them, though.
Why would a 16-year-old be going?
Hang
to
on,
jail
I don't
though?
understand. Because he murdered someone.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, if you
Yeah.
murder someone, that's a whole.
So I don't understand. Why can't he vote? The laws apply to him. Why can't he vote?
Yeah, but we all understand that.
No, we all understand it's not an argument. Why does a 16-year-old get to vote, even though all the laws apply to the 16-year-old? Why does he get to vote?
Not all the laws apply. They start in juvenile detention, and then at 18, they get the right to go.
So laws apply to 16-year-olds?
But you're retried at 18.
So
like when
laws
you start
apply
at
to
16,
16-year-olds?
Some laws, of course.
Okay,
yes.
great. Why can't they vote then?
So babies should get the right to vote?
That's
I mean,
my
you're a
question
minor.
to you. That makes no sense. Exactly. So why do we limit it to 18?
Well, that's the age that we've defined as being a legal adult. That's the age that we as a country have universally agreed with our right to vote is.
Yeah, but what
the age
makes
of
that a
legal
good
adult.
idea? Just
That's
because
the
you
age of
arbitrarily.
consent. That's the age
Yeah,
of-
but just because you arbitrarily say, for instance, that because you're 18 and you're an adult, like you can't buy cigarettes, you can't buy beer, you can't rent a car, but you're an adult. And now you can vote in the
So would you like to
participation of
lower the
democracy.
age of
At
an
least
adult?
raise it.
So you'd like to raise it?
At least raise it.
So you would like to universally raise the age to vote? I think that
At
would be a better
least.
idea than like not allowing
No.
anyone.
What I said is at least do that. But the thing is, like, you're actually inconsistent here. Your whole argument is to say if laws affect people, they should have a right to vote. But we have an entire cast of people from the age 17 down who laws apply to and can't vote. And you just are like, you shrug that off like you didn't contradict yourself.
I'm pretty sure it has something to do with brain development. But we've all.
And regardless of going to adult prison or not, you can definitely go to a juvenile facility or even something that's more focused on the psychological aspects of it, but it is a restricted freedom. It is some form of incarceration. So technically, even a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, 11, they can be affected directly by the laws and they can lose their freedoms and be incarcerated. It just may not be, straight to San Quentin or something.
You have to have an
Not fully
age in
developed
which-
till what, 25 according
But
to
how do you have a
the
society
studies?
in which you don't have an age that someone becomes a legal
I
adult?
agree, but why couldn't you have a society in which you had stakeholder democracy? It's the same logic.
So if you're saying that we should not disenfranchise children, why would you then disenfranchise people who are legal adults?
When did I ever make the claim that I wanted children to be able to vote?
You just said that if everyone should have the
No,
right
I
to vote.
told you that your view is inconsistent. If it is the case propositionally, you say, Andrew, if laws apply to people, they should be able to vote. Except, everybody 17 and under. That's inconsistent.
Because the laws
hang
do
on.
apply to children
It's
differently than they
inconsistent
apply to
and a
adults.
contradiction.
But laws do apply to
What about the
children
laws that
differently
don't?
than they do.
What about the laws that don't? What about the laws where you're 17 years old and you can be tried as an adult?
Well, those are to protect like public freedom. I mean, but everyone loses civil liberties when they are a danger to the public.
Yeah, but
that's everyone.
Do you understand that you're making a contradiction when you say if laws should apply to all people should have a right to vote because they have laws which can be applied, they can be sent to prison was your example. That would have to include everyone under the age of 18.
But people under the age of 18 don't go to adult prisons.
Yes, they do all the time.
Don't.
Yes.
They 100% do. It just depends on the state. I don't believe that every state allows for it, but like I said earlier, I'm pretty sure Louisiana, and it's not the only one. There's plenty of states where you can go to adult prison. There's even an entire, maybe at least one, these groups that fight against that, and they wouldn't be fighting against it if it didn't happen.
They do. That
What's
is, you want me to give you sources of 16, 17-year-olds tried as adults and sent to adult prisons?
Okay, but that's like an exception for exclusively horrific crimes. I mean, those are violent offenders.
Does the law apply to them or not?
To violent offenders, if you are a threat to public safety, yes.
Okay.
Everyone who
then
is a
if
threat
the
to public
law
safety,
applies to them and they can be sent to jail, then by your logic, they should be able to vote, which
but for
means
those
you're in
offenders,
contradiction.
To those offenders, they are sent to juvenile detention centers until they turn 18, and then they are sent to an adult prison.
Not always.
They are
No,
still
they're
tried as a
sent
child.
often to adult centers, even at 17, to adult prisons.
You can be sentenced as an adult, but you can't be sent to an adult prison at the age of 16.
This would depend widely on the state that you're in. It's not rigorously enforced across the board like you think. There's not like, I don't think there's federal laws which say this. But
Well, then I
even
think
if it were
that's
the case,
wrong.
I'll just grant it.
Well, then that's wrong.
I'll even grant the entire thing. It still wouldn't matter. Laws apply to them. They can still be sent to prison. They fit both of your criteria. Therefore, if you say they shouldn't be able to vote, your worldview's in contradiction.
Well, then I think that's wrong. I don't believe that children should be tried as adults until they have become adults.
So no
I
laws
disagree with
apply to
that.
children.
No.
Well, then why shouldn't they be able to vote?
A threat to public safety always applies to everyone. Threats to public safety always apply to everyone.
Yeah, but why shouldn't they be able to vote if laws apply to them? That's your example.
Laws apply to children, but they are not, in practice, punished in the same way that they apply to adults. It's applied
Can they be
differently.
punished?
Of course they can
Then
be
why
punished.
can't they vote?
But you have to have some way to maintain societal control. Children aren't just allowed to do whatever the fuck they want because they're
Right.
kids.
You need to be able to have some sort of societal control. So
Yes.
this would mean necessarily disenfranchising some people, wouldn't it?
It would mean necessarily disenfranchising children. Yes, they're not
no,
adults.
it would also mean disenfranchising prisoners. Do you want prisoners to vote on their right to own guns in a prison?
Not their right to own guns in a prison.
Well, then you're
But I do
disenfranchising
think
them.
that people who were in prison and then leave prison should then have
Felons?
the right to vote.
But they're disenfranchised currently under the law, right?
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. If you're a felon, you can't vote.
Yes. Oh, well, once they leave, yes, I do think that that's disenfranchisement, and I think Florida just rolled that back.
Yeah,
Florida.
but what's wrong with disenfranchising like murderers for life?
What's wrong with disenfranchisement? Well, they would be in jail for life. If
No,
they
no, no.
committed a
They're
murder.
out of jail. They're just felons, so they can't vote.
Well, I think that felons should be able to vote once they
Should
have
felons be able to own guns?
No, because it's.
Oh, well, I don't understand you. So you're again,
But do
you
you
are so
understand-
inconsistent with your
Pause a minute.
disenfranchising.
Pookie, do you understand?
What?
Disenfranchisement should exist so long as someone is a threat to public safety. The reason why prisoners are not allowed to vote who are currently in prison is because they are a threat to public safety.
16-year-olds aren't a threat to public safety.
No, but they're children. You can't allow anyone
So
to vote
you
who's a
can
child.
arbitrarily disenfranchise people based on the fact that you think they're not capable of making good voting decisions, right?
No, a child is legally different than an adult.
Because they can't make
You can't have
good-
sex with a child.
Because
That
they
would be
can't
statutory rape.
because they can't make good decisions.
No, because they're legally classified as a child. Do you not understand what
Because
a
they
child is?
can't make good decisions.
I just have to say, I know it's kind of a side note, but the ironic part is Naima on the right here. She also advocates for children being able to use hormones and things like that to transition. So she wants to make this argument on one hand, and then also say, well, they're children and they don't have the ability to comprehend this, and they shouldn't be held liable for this. They're just children. They're just children. They're just children. But it's like, this is what the left does. They want it both ways. They want their cake. They want to eat it too. They contradict themselves, and it's just a lot of hypocrisy going on.
Because they're 2 and 3 and 4. They're not legally an
So
adult.
they can't make good decisions.
No, they can make good decisions, but generally speaking, you can't have children vote. There is a
I
legal
agree
age to
with
vote.
you. You can't.
Okay.
But why is it then that if I were to say that I only want 25-year-olds to vote, I would be disenfranchising?
But you didn't say you only want 25-year-olds to vote. You
do you
said
understand?
that you only want one marriage voting system per household.
Yeah,
You
well, that's
said
one way, yeah.
You want less of
But-
both adult men and
But do you
adult
understand how
women
my
to
view
be
is
able to vote.
consistent, but yours isn't? Because if you were to agree with me that you wanted, like, okay, Andrew, I would compromise the 25-year-olds voting, you've now disenfranchised everyone from the ages of 18 through 24.
If you were considered a
all
legal
overnight.
adult, you should be able to vote. That's my state. If you are considered a legal adult, if you are tried as an adult, if you are allowed to buy a house,
Yeah.
have a child.
But that leads to the problem is that leads to political tribalism. So, like, for instance, why is it a healthy society to have men and women who are married voting against each other? That's a terrible idea.
Because they're both like. But if a man commits a murder, does his wife go to jail for that crime?
No.
No, because they're not the same fucking person.
What does that have to do with anything?
If they're different people and they're both tried differently and they both have separate lives and
Yeah.
separate bank accounts
Yeah.
and separate bodily and physical autonomy,
Yeah.
then they should each get a stake in this government. No.
Well, that literally has nothing to do with what I just asked.
They're not the same
So real
person,
quick,
so
can
why
you-
should they be represented
You remember
as the
how I
same
said
thing?
yes and no to your question? Can you do that for me? Remember how I was like yes and just answered it? Can you actually do that for
I
me
don't
too?
remember that at all.
You literally just asked me that question. You said if a husband's carted off to prison, does her wife go to prison? I said no.
Okay.
Can you do that for me too, and then give your explanation? Because otherwise, I don't
That's
know
what I
your
just did.
actual
I said
position.
This thing and then gave the explanation.
So now I'd like to know,
You should listen
do you
to it.
think it's a good idea for wives and husbands to be able to vote against each other's interests?
They should both have a vote, yes.
Well, but they can vote against each other's interests, right?
That is circumstantial. They may not, they might.
Yeah, they may not, they might. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But why is it good that option's even there? Seems like a terrible idea.
Because in a representative democracy, everyone should be represented with a vote.
Yeah, I get that's a descriptive truth, but you're not telling me why that should be the case. If I were to give you the counterclaim here, I would say if you had like one household voting or something like this, it would be much more uniform and wouldn't divide families against each other. And that's exactly what the vote has done.
But they're both
I disagree with Andrew there. I think that it would still. I have a good friend of mine, and he and his wife are opposites politically. It has caused issues, but I don't think that giving one person a vote would stop conflict and prevent them from being upset with each other. I think that whoever just didn't get to put their vote, or whoever's vote didn't get to cast, would be the one who would be extremely upset, and the other person would be the one that would be fine with it. But I don't think they would prevent issues. Let me know in the comments what you think.
to the same legislative, like they can both be legislated independent of each other, right?
No, well, not really. One cannot, at that point, make a decision that doesn't affect the other one, usually.
Yes, I can.
Not really. What?
I mean, Roe v. Wade. That only affects a woman's body, right? No?
You think that if a man is married to a woman and she goes and aborts his baby, that doesn't affect him?
Of course it does, but it affects him differently than his body.
But it still
affects him. This is one of the many absurdities with the pro-life versus pro-choice argument. This idea that only females are ever affected by a successful or a terminated pregnancy is just asinine, because the chick has all the say in it. And I've literally seen videos of guys crying and begging outside of clinics because they want this baby, but they have no say in it. That person, I mean, according to the left, would be experiencing emotional trauma, and they'd be disenfranchised, and they've had their decision-making removed from them. And they'll just say, well, it's her body, her body, her body, her body. But you can't make the argument that it doesn't affect them. I mean, very poor choice of words. Maybe she meant something differently, but to say that it doesn't affect the men, it's just, if the baby's born and the guy doesn't want it, he has no say in it. And now he's on the hook for child support for the rest of his, the child's adult life. If he wants the baby and she doesn't want it, then he's on the hook for the emotional trauma that comes with his belief that the child is being, unalived. And so to say that doesn't affect them is just completely inconsiderate.
That's my whole point is that everything they do in this household is going to affect each other.
Sure.
So you wouldn't want to promote systems
But they
which
still are
divide
individuals.
husbands against wives.
But they're individuals. No.
What does
Are
that
they
do
the
with
same
anything?
Are they the same person or not?
This is not what's in dispute.
Are they the same person or not?
Okay, no.
Then why should they not each have an individual liberty? What if they get a divorce?
Because you don't want to set up systems that divide them against each other. That's
well,
a bad
then
idea.
Marry someone who doesn't want to vote with you. But that's...
No, do you understand that like people's preferences change over time, and there could be various reasons in which if you have a tribal type of mentality, like take abortion for instance. Abortion's a great one. Do you think that it's possible that women, for instance, could hold it against their husband and say things like, do this or I'll abort your child? They could actually do that, right?
Yeah, hypothetically, sure.
Yeah, and have done that.
And that would be immoral.
And have done that.
That would be immoral.
Yeah,
and wrong.
but you wouldn't say they couldn't go get the abortion, would you?
But would you say a man can't?
But hang on. Answer the question first.
What?
You wouldn't say that they shouldn't be allowed to do that, though, would you?
Well, if it would be disenfranchising millions of other women who aren't in that situation
That's
and need an abortion, then
yes or no, please. You wouldn't say that you would not actually say that they should not be allowed to get the abortion, right?
No, I think everyone should have access to free
Okay,
will.
so even if it were the case that a woman, right, was holding the man basically emotionally hostage with her pregnancy and said, do what I say or I'll get an abortion, right, you would not make any claim that she could or could not get that abortion, would you?
I would make a claim that what she's doing is immoral, but I wouldn't make a claim that because
and should
one
anything
person is
happen to a
immoral.
woman who does that?
Yeah.
What?
I mean, that's blackmailing.
It's not
crime.
blackmail?
I think on a level it's emotional blackmail. I
Yeah.
think you should be able
So
to sue someone
what
for
should
emotional
happen? Should they
blackmail.
go to jail?
I mean, maybe pay damages or a fine.
A fine?
Yeah.
How much should the fine be?
I don't know.
$200?
How much is an abortion?
They'd be the same as an abortion?
Can I ask you a question?
So just
Can
to
I
get
ask
this
you a
right, well, I
question?
want to finish this real quick.
No, can
and then
I
we
ask
can
you a
move
question?
back. Well, no, you can't until I finish the inquiry.
Okay,
but
well,
then
I'm
you
not going to answer your question.
But
until I
you can
ask
inquire back. I just want to finish this inquiry,
Go
the
for
line
it.
of inquiry. That's all. So just to make sure I got this right, you have now said that the tribal voting does indeed pit husband against wife, has a potential to do so. Right? And I've even conceded to specific examples of where it would be in a woman's interest to vote against her husband, to have a right to do something which could be used against him later, and then said, well, the punishment should be like, oh, maybe she pays a fine if something like that happens. And how are you going to convince people that that's a better system than one household voting? That's a terrible system.
And that's the end of that video. Let me know in the comments what you think. There was some points made by both sides. I will say that Andrew does have a bigger familiarity with the debate process. And so when he's saying, like, can you answer yes or no before you start explaining? And then Naima, some people are very afraid to even give an inch or concede on a single point. And it just makes them look like a contrarian or defiant instead of somebody who's debating in good faith. I don't think she had bad intentions. I just think that she went on there with the intent to win debates. And sometimes that's not the best look, and it also doesn't make for the best arguments because you have to contradict yourself in order to maintain your attempt at, quote, winning. But yeah, some good points made by both. I disagree with her on some of the things she said. I definitely disagree with Andrew on the one vote per household deal, and basically if his reasoning for that is that it's going to stop conflict in the household, I think it's just going to leave someone pissed off they didn't get to vote. But as usual, let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks for tuning in to MurrayMax, and I'll keep pumping out some more videos.